trouble, is when you try to tweak one thing from another like that. Jeff Gorman, we're going to talk some Indians. They get Jason Bere to manage the bullpen here, former pitcher. I remember Jason Bere back with the White Sox. Hey, talking about number one picks, he may have been a number one pick too. I remember Bere was a big young prospect back in the day. Anyways, he's going to come in, replace Kevin Cash. Let's talk about that and Hall of Fame balloting going on. Who do you got? If you were to put 10 names down out of that grouping, it's not exactly as easy as it sounds. Let's talk about all of that and the Indians. Not that they've given us a ton of things to talk about, but here's something we can say. 30 days from today, I just got the email from the tribe. The truck heads down to Goodyear. 30 days from today, 44 days from today, they start throwing a baseball around and almost trying. And then a few days after that, they all get together and start playing some catch. And then pretty soon, they're actually putting bat to ball and playing some baseball. With that, let's talk about it. Jeff Gorman from Indians101.com with us. You can keep the conversation rolling. Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Tweet with us at SportsFixCLE. Jeff, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing great, J-Rock, and I know that the Cavs aren't really my milieu on this show, but I don't want to drag you back into that conversation too much. But one thing I wanted to point out is this trade to me kind of reminded me of the first time we had LeBron James and we traded Ricky Davis. Maybe getting rid of somebody like him who has maybe some of the same skill set, like pouring points into the basket when you need, somebody to do something different, in this case, defense. And, of course, with JR, you're taking somebody else's headache away from them. But I kind of got a bit of with DIon Waiters, I got kind of a Ricky Davis trade vibe from this.
Ricky Davis? Really? I'll tell you, my favorite quote about Ricky Davis is when he was quoted in the Plain Dealer as saying, man, I thought LeBron James was just brought here to help me out when they drafted LeBron, man. Like, I'm just saying, wrong way, Ricky Davis, man. But really, see, maybe I am, I know everybody has their guys, and DIon Waiters is a guy that, now, I wasn't the biggest fan of the pick as it happened, only because I wanted Bradley Beal so bad. I thought he was going to fall right into the Cavs there in that spot. Washington obviously knew what they were doing too, snatched him up. Then all of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere, here comes DIon Waiters from Syracuse. And at first I was like, really? But I did see some stuff in him where I thought that he could, and this is all, after the fact now. I mean, who knows? He came into a situation where there was no goal to win. As we know, what the Cavs have been for the last few years, there was tumultuousness in the grouping. And I agree, Vishan, I agree. He was a reach as a draft pick. But it was one of those risk-reward deals, and I did see some payoff. I thought DIon could ball. I still think DIon can ball, and I think that he may do well if he can assimilate himself into that Oklahoma City Thunder deal there. But I hear you about the attitude. I've always, maybe it's because I'm independent, as you know. Not only independently ran with the Sports Fix, but I've been an independent wrestler my whole life. I've always been my own business venture. I've always invested in myself and believed in myself. So I'm big on, that. I'm big on, if you're not going to give me the opportunity, I respectfully disagree, and I'm going to prove you wrong. Let's go to work. So I got a thing for guys like that. So with DIon, I always took his moxie as, hey, I will do what you need me to do, but I do believe I'm a starter. I do believe that I should be able to play because I think I can ball. And to me, if you don't have that, what are you? I mean, I get being a good team player, and that's the thing. He never didn't do what the team asked him to do. Now, he did sulk from time to time, and you could see it. And then he would snap out of it, and he would play. And you'd go, hey, there you go, And, again, it is what it is. I get people didn't like his. I always thought that you could reach DIon, and if you do, you'd have a hell of a basketball player there. But obviously, Cavaliers reached the point where they felt they could get something else for him. But I just think you traded a younger version for an older version of a similar guy with Smith.
Well, yeah, they did in that case, but I think Shumpert is the biggest piece of this trade coming to the Cavs because they desperately need somebody to play defense, especially with Bere out hurt. And I think that Philadelphia can definitely be considered a rock-bottom moment, and hopefully they can, pick the pieces back up and, get Love and LeBron back off of injury and just sort of salvage the second half of the season, even if they don't, win the number one seed. Just get some momentum going into that playoffs. Because right now, it doesn't get too much worse than what they did in Philadelphia.
we got to change. Did you just say even if they don't get the number one seed? Listen, at this point, man, you're trying to get your team cohesive for the playoffs. People need to get their mind out of the clouds and stop talking about number one seeds and NBA finals and playoffs. This team just lost to one of the worst teams in the history of the NBA, and that is not an exaggeration. That's not saying that this team is, you know what I mean. What I'm saying is they're so far from there that I don't understand people. I saw tweets all up and down my timeline about that last night. Like, now the Cavs can get back on the focus of the championship. And I'm like, what? We're obviously on two different planets right now. That's like saying, what one move can the Browns make tomorrow to go to the Super Bowl next year? They're not one move. You know what I mean? It's that thought process is. But yeah, man, let's be real. The Cavs right now need to get themselves on track to be a winning basketball team because they're just a hair above 500.
Right, because you got to realize that if the team with LeBron, Wade, and Bosh didn't win it all their first year, this team certainly isn't winning it all their first year. So it looks like just take one step at a time.
Well, yeah, we said that from the beginning anyway. But again, just it's interesting to see here. But you can feel the panic. It's the pressure that comes, whether it's self-imposed or not. You can say it's a cute business move to have your top guys in position to get bigger contracts, and it's only business. And I'm not saying LeBron's going to leave. I'm not doing all that. I'm just simply saying that also creates the pressure of knowing that you're in a position where you're not protected. You're guaranteed. Kyrie Irving's not going anywhere. You can tell him what to do every day because you do not have to worry that he's not going to like it and that he's going to walk away from you. They don't have that protection with everybody. That pressure causes you to make decisions that you wouldn't normally make. Right. It's the fact that they can do it that's the scary part of it, man. All right. We're talking a lot of Cavaliers here. We'll see, man. I mean, really, it can't. I hate to say it. Well, no, I can't say that because it can get worse. It absolutely can. But seriously, you would like to hope that they've reached the bottom here and can at least begin to turn things around. You know, we'll see. We'll talk about it. We'll talk more. I expect more moves to come. But you and I talking some baseball. We're live. So an hour from now or so, the balloting will be announced and finalized here. Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Always an interesting off right around here. Perfect timing. It's right in the middle of the dead period. Hot stoves kind of cooled off. Spring training talk hasn't exactly picked back up again. But looking at the balloting here, you've got 34 names on it. Of course, a lot of them are just names that are on for the first time. But, I mean, you could literally go 20 deep on the Hall of Fame balloting, at least, and make legitimate arguments for these guys this year. Obviously, you got the steroid guys mixed in and all of that. But, I mean, this is a very, very deep Hall of Fame ballot this year. I mean, starting at the top with a guy who just missed the 75% last year, Craig Biggio, and working your way on down. And then you've got first-year balloting here for so many guys like the Big Unit and Pedro Martinez and Smoltzy and even Gary Sheffield, who's on the outside looking in, you know. I mean, this is a very interesting ballot this year.
That's right. And one of the things that I like is now that we're in a position in our lives that we can look at all these guys who are eligible for the Hall of Fame and say, you know what, I saw this guy's entire career. And, you know,
right.
When you're a kid, it's like, well, yeah, this guy, I heard he was good back in the 50s, but, you know, I never saw him play. Here, we've seen their whole, you know, genre all the way through from beginning to end, and you can really ask yourself, well, I remember this guy playing. Do I see this guy being like a Hall of Fame guy, or is he kind of on the fringe? Because, you know, I've looked at a lot of these names, and, you know, some of them are no-brainers, and others are kind of like, really, Hall of Fame, man? More like the Hall of Very Good.
Well, I'll tell you what, and that's a good point, talking about the spanning your lifestyle, because as I'm looking at the list, I agree with you. The majority of these names, I can say I've reached a point in my life where, with the exception of a couple, like I may not have seen, you know, Lee Smith may have preceded me just a little bit, but the majority of these guys, I can say what you just said, that I saw their entire career during the time that I kind of knew what I was paying attention to. So you can look back at it that way. That is interesting. I don't know, maybe that's not so good because you've reached a point where the entire ballot, you go, hey, Sonny, I saw those guys play, but
right.
Not quite that old, but seriously, you are right. And so that does give you a little different perspective when guys like us are looking at it. You know, obviously, I brought up Biggio. He came, was it 1 vote short last year or whatnot? 74.8% of the vote when you need 75% to get in. To me, that's the hardest of the hard denials to deal with when you go, really? That close, you know, because not necessarily in this, but in other sports, they all have those that have those thresholds. I've seen guys where, and I don't expect it to be Biggio, but I've seen guys where they've come a vote or two short and never got that close again. And then you look back and go, man, if I had only gotten one more, you know, but that's a kicker there. 74.8%. Do you think Biggio tops 75 this year?
That's kind of tricky. I think he might not, considering, you know, who else is up there right now. I mean, you've got Randy Johnson and Pedro and Smoltz. You know, Biggio would be kind of an outside shot for that number 4 spot. But, you know, I think if guys of that caliber were not just now coming onto the ballot and Biggio is still like one of the real top names out there, then I think people would look at him and say, you know what? I think he really deserves to be there, and, you know, maybe a few other people would vote for him. But I think there's so much attention on these other guys that I think that Biggio, he might accidentally, I mean, not accidentally, he might actually fall back a little bit. It's really strange because when you think about those teams from the mid-'90s, from the Astros, I have a friend who was crazy about the Astros, and he loved Biggio and Bagwell, and that was his team. This is the guy, I used to do a baseball talk show with him. My friend Dave and Jeff covered the bases, and he would always, you know, be pimping the Biggio and Bagwell. But, you know, it always seemed like Bagwell was kind of, you know, a little bit higher than Biggio. He was kind of the main event guy, and then Biggio, of course, he was very, very good, but, you know, but Bagwell seemed to be kind of a bigger star, and of course he had the MVP. But when you look at it at the end of their career, when you look about the Hall of Fame, you look at Biggio with the 3,000 hits, and of course only, you know, Eddie Collins and Nat Lajoie are the only other 2 second basemen to collect 3,000 hits. And then you say, well, he had that, and also because he's a second baseman, you know, that's a little bit of more of a rare position as far as to find really all-time greats. Of course, there's tons of great first basemen, great outfielders, great pitchers, but, you know, it's a shorter list when you talk about, you know, all of Fame caliber second baseman, just like shortstop. So that kind of pushes Biggio a little bit ahead of Bagwell, because you can look at Bagwell and say, well, there are a lot of good first basemen like Bagwell throughout baseball. So I mean, that's kind of why Biggio gets a little bit of a boost, but I think this year it might not be enough.
Well, absolutely. You know, and the era, too, that you play in with the inflated numbers and all of that kind of works against you there. But you brought up a point about the first ballot, and it's funny because last year I could have made this point more. We know how difficult it is to be a first ballot Hall of Famer until last year when 3 of them went in on the first ballot. You know, it's kind of tweaks my argument for this year with Maddox, Glavine, and Thomas. But you brought up those new guys being added to a list that was already strong coming back. Randy Johnson, Pedro Martinez, John Smoltz, those 3 specifically. And you know what? No easy feat to get in, by the way, on your first ballot, as I was saying. Last year will fool you a bit. And I think that part of that, not only are these 3 all no doubt Hall of Famers, but I mean, you've got other people who people aren't willing to acknowledge at all on the voting. So I think that played into the having 3 guys first ballot go last year. But you look at, you know, it's amazing to me when I look at some of the guys who did not get first ballot voting into the Hall of Fame. Joe DiMaggio. Like, think about that. Like, that's a no-brainer now. But, I mean,
great.
Check this list of guys who all had to wait until at least their second ballot to get in. And it's amazing when you listen to this list. Joe DiMaggio, Jimmy Fox, Yogi Berra, Whitey Ford, Cy Young, the man who the award is named after, Tris Speaker, Nat Lajoie, Mel Ott, Eddie Matthews, Roy Campanella, Harmon Killebrew, all Hall of Famers that waited 2, 3 years, etc., to be elected into the Hall of Fame. So not easy. Before the 3 last year, Rickey Henderson back in 2009 was the last first ballot Hall of Famer. And even then, when you look at the percentages, nobody has ever, that I know of, clean swept everything. I mean, even Babe Ruth only got 95% of the voting. Ty Cobb, 98% of the vote. I laugh at that because I just wonder, like, who was the 1 or 2 people that didn't think that Babe Ruth was a Hall of Famer, or Ty Cobb, and I get that they all have their warts in their career. I know what people would argue, but my point is you sit there and you go, wow, really? Of all, you know what I mean?